Hey, welcome everybody. We've got another episode of Office Hours. I'm Chris Wooley, the photo professor. And today we've got some fun questions and some images to check out. So we're going to dive right in. So first question we have from Mike, and he wants to know about burnout. What do you do when you are stuck or are just kind of dreading what's happening with your photography? You're not being inspired, not passionate. We just need to get those creative juices flowing. And this is something that affects us all, particularly creatives. We put our heart and our emotion into the artwork that we're putting out. And so when things aren't working right, or we're just kind of feeling a little bit repetitive in that process, we get burnout. I know I experienced that both in my professional work as well as my creative stuff. And that one's really, really challenging because we start getting there and then it just feels like a routine that we're going through versus being creative, versus being a creative outlet, which doesn't help inspire us or make us want to create those fun things. And so what do we do when that happens? And this one I think is a little bit different for everybody depending on what it is. But I found for me, and this has come from my perspective, and maybe you've got some solutions that you could share with us too, but I like to put boundaries and limitations on what I'm doing. And I know that sounds a little bit weird in terms of like putting on boundaries, but if I limit how long I'm allowed to work on a project, or I have a deadline or something that's ending with it, that says, okay, I just need to get through this little bit and then I can give myself that refresher, that break that's on it. One of the reasons that I've set up the format for office hours here, breaking it up into kind of seasons, is so that I can give myself a natural break. I know that I've got an extended period of time that I can reset, refresh. That way I can come back in excited and looking forward to it. So if you're finding that you're getting burnt out where you don't want to go to those meetups or you don't want to meet with something, you don't want to practice your techniques, switch it up. Give yourself a break, permission to give yourself that reset. Find something that's a little bit different or a little bit new, a way to add some of that trivia into it. Or if you're working on a project and you want to get more flexible with it, maybe put some parameters on there that says, you know what, I'm going to do this, but I'm only going to retouch this with the sliders inside of Lightroom. I'm not going to get heavy pixel editing. Or maybe you say, you know what, I need to do and see what I can accomplish going out with my camera, and I'm only going to use one lens, only a 50mm lens. We'll see what I can capture with it. Setting some boundaries can help you get creative, looking at it in a new or unique way. Instead of saying, you know what, I always like to have a really shallow depth of field, and I like to have my subject strong and center. Say, you know what, I need to show more environmental. Or I'm going to shoot with an extremely deep depth of field. That way I have to make sure that I'm accounting for my scene that's coming through with it. What do you do when you're getting into that burnout mode, or you need to kind of respark some of that creativity? Anybody here want to share anything that they do with it? Maybe unmute and share?
We just had a workshop from our local art guild called Artist Reset. And it's how to get into your subconscious and replace the negative thoughts with positive thoughts.
Ooh, can you give me an example of that, Liz?
Well, like, if you're on burnout and you're thinking like, artists suffer from imposter syndrome and they think that they're not good enough to do something, instead of thinking that and then replace it with the thought that, yeah, I can do this. And then there's also exercises, which sound really weird, but it's like rolling your eyes up and down your head, and looking left and right several times, and then rolling your eyes completely around. And it just totally resets your brain.
Interesting. I'm going to have to try that. But I do like the positive twist on things.
Yeah, it was a really interesting workshop.
Yeah, Bruce?
I'm involved with something called the Redlands Camera Club. It's been around since 1996. And one thing nice about it is if I feel kind of frustrated with my own work, I still can say, okay, I'm going to go help out some of the new people coming into the arena by going and working with that group. So it gives me something else to kind of help inspire them, and inspiring them, I kind of get inspired.
That's a really, really good point. The mentoring or helping others, it kind of takes your mind or the pressure off of saying, I need to have perfection that's going out there. It gives you a new lens to view it from. Also, if you're studying for like the CPP or you're trying to learn a new concept, explaining it to somebody else can help you understand it better and deeper. How do you take this complex subject and make it so that it's in bite-sized or a simple format? Getting it out in a single sentence. It's like, wow, you really have to know it. I like that. Sarah?
Yeah, I really agree with that, because I've been a college professor too, and other teaching, and you learn more than the students do.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Sarah, you have your hand up on this one too?
Oh, yeah. Echoing Bruce, I'm a volunteer instructor for the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at the University of Denver. 3 sessions a year, and I'm always foolish enough to sign up to do something, writing or photography. Plus, if you got a bunch of projects working at once, if one of them is just sending egg beaters into your mind, move on to the next one, or go to the gym and listen to really loud Mexican rock music on your earphones.
I do like the procrastination tip. If you have multiple projects and you start getting burnt out on one, and you're like, okay, I'm going to procrastinate on this by working on my other projects. I'm definitely guilty of that, but for whatever reason, it works really well for my brain. So I like to do that juggling that's on there. We've got some fun strategies here. Going to move on to the next question. What do you do if you can't get your image to be how you envision it? So you've got this idea in your mind of what it needs to look like, and it's just not happening. Maybe it's during the actual photo process, maybe it's during the artwork stage of it, but whatever is happening, there's a disconnect between what's in your head and what's coming out, your output for it. What do you do then? I'm a little bit lucky on this. I don't know if you know this about me, but I have a condition called aphantasia, which means that I don't have visual imagery. If you try to picture an apple, I can't do it. My mind's just blank. So I don't have the ability to envision things and try to recreate them. And I know a lot of people do, especially photographers. We tend to be on the opposite end of that spectrum where everything is just larger than life or very vivid, detailed, and all these cool imaginative things that are out there. For me, though, it's entirely blank, so I don't get to envision anything ahead of time. So I work with a very technical process, and this might be something that can help you if things aren't working right or it's just not happening how you have it planned. What we do in that process, or what I do, is I try to think about the constraints. What am I trying to accomplish with this image? What is the lighting conditions that I need to do? Maybe I want to have short lighting to flatter my subject a little bit more. Maybe I want to introduce motion so it's got some energy and movement to it. Maybe it needs to be on location, so I need to make sure that I'm photographing at a certain time of day so that my location is lit really, really well. So I pull up all the technical aspects of an image, saying, what do I need to do to actually make this happen, and why do I want to do that? So I really evaluate the decisions that I'm making. And once I have those little bits, I start figuring out how they all fit together, and I use that to shape what my techniques are. So how we can apply this, if you're not able to get that image coming across, something that you have in your mind, start looking at it. Why are we having those certain elements? Why is it posed this way? Why is it lit this way? Why is this camera angle or camera lens selected for the project? And start examining what each of those details are. Not just this final conceptual image, but look at the actual specifics, the technical things of it, and see what's happening, why you're needing to make those choices, and how they can actually translate into your final images. You'd be amazed at what happens when we start breaking down those little elements and saying, oh, I need to have some contrast in this image. This isn't a light and airy image. It needs to be dramatic and moody. So I need hard directional light. I need modifiers that are going to help me accomplish that. And then we can start adding in those elements and switching things around so that you can accomplish it. So that's my perspective on it. Bruce, I can see you've got some input on there too.
One thing that you're talking about is when you're in the creative state, or doing the shooting, etc. I tend to be on the other side when just doing the processing, and sometimes I get so frustrated I can't get the image processed the way I want. And at that point, I think the best thing to do is put that to the side and grab the original image again and start over, because maybe you've gotten down a path that is blocking you from where you want to go. Start it again, go to a different direction.
That's a really good point, to kind of just start over, refresh, not be confined by the techniques that you were using when you originally started to do something, trying something out that's new and fresh. Anybody else do anything different?
A rather famous Colorado artist, Amy Metier, has always said of her abstract work that she'll get to a point where she realizes it's a darn mess. And then it's her job to take the mess and bring it back. And oftentimes she'll do something like what Bruce was talking about, take possible elements out of the image, go back to those and bring them in again and see where she can move it past this messy stage.
I love it. I love it. So if we're hitting in those roadblocks, sometimes just taking a different perspective on it, or seeing if we can refocus or redefine, pun intended, on what we're doing with it. All right. Next question that we have for today, this is the last one that we'll hit up before we start looking at images. So this one's from Rita. She wants to know, how do you find a shop or person for help when making photo purchases? Particularly if maybe your local camera store shut down and now that resource isn't available. And the specific example that she gave is she recently purchased a flash and a wireless transmitter, and they don't work together. She had gone with some text help, and they said that they would work together, but they are actually not compatible. They're compatible with her camera, but they don't work with each other. So how do you find that missing link of saying, I need somebody with some real life help? And this is something that makes me a little bit sad, that we have so many camera stores closing down. Everybody's going to Amazon or shopping at big box stores with all of our photo gear. And sure, you get great prices on it, maybe more competitive than what our local stores can do, but we miss out on that customer service. Somebody that can actually say, hey, I'm going to listen to what you're doing in photography and make recommendations that are specific to you. Not something that you have to necessarily watch like a YouTube influencer and see what's being promoted because it's the latest and greatest, or maybe they're sponsored by them, or that we've got just a new shiny object that's out there that we think might solve our problems, but we don't actually know if that's the best solution for us. There's so many options out there, and it feels like there's more and more things that are coming, new iterations of existing technologies, different models, new things being developed on there. I know even over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, just looking at like wireless flash technology, it has skyrocketed in terms of what is possible. There's so many cool systems out there, so many great brands, and so many cool things. There's just a lot of options, and it's a bit overwhelming. So if you do have a local camera store, even if you have to drive for it, I'd highly recommend going there and actually learning from people that eat, sleep, and breathe the photography industry. Like, was recently doing a photo workshop this last fall at Pictureline down in Salt Lake City, and it was so nice to actually walk into a camera store, a real life camera store, and be able to hold things, look at them, feel them, and test them out, try them out. It was so nice. Up in Washington State, we've got Glazier's cameras. You could do the exact same thing. You can actually open up that camera bag and say, do I like how this feels, how this looks? Does it work for what my layout is? Can I bring in my gear and actually stack it in? Rachel and I, on more than a few occasions, have brought in our camera bags and tried out different ones when we're testing them out, saying, will this actually fit everything in there? Versus buying online, where you say, well, I hope it all fits and I'll make it work, or figure out how we can do that. So if you do have the option to work with an in-person camera store, that is by far my favorite recommendation. If you can't do that, then try to find somebody that can maybe give you some guidance on specific gear, somebody that's doing what you want to do. So if they're doing portrait photography and they're working on location, find somebody with some specific gear recommendations that is doing that type of work. If you're a wedding photographer and you need somebody to, or you need a recommendation for lights that are going to light up the dance floor, being battery powered might be a good choice. Having fast recycle times could be a good choice. What gear is going to actually accomplish that for you? If you're doing macro photography or wildlife photography, looking at camera recommendations based on somebody that's actually doing that is very, very helpful. At the very bottom of my list is going through to our online stores like Amazon. where we don't necessarily know the actual seller. We don't know if it's gray market. We don't know anything about it. We can't verify the claims. We can maybe ask some of the tech support and see if they've got some recommendations, but they're going to be probably pulling from a script or something that's AI generated. So it might say, yes, this is going to work together because it's compatible with your camera, but the two pieces might not talk to each other, which is what happened in Rita's case. She talked to tech support. They said, yes, they'll work with your Canon camera, but they don't actually talk to each other. The transmitter and the receiver were on two separate systems, so it didn't work out for her. If we're talking specifically flash gear, there are some local vendors that can be really, really helpful. For instance, Molite, Michael Mowbray has that. He's our local Godox distributor, and he knows a ton, and he knows his product line really well for a variety of photographers. So talking to somebody that's got a very, very niche store might also be a good suggestion for coming up with that age-old question of how do we make sure it's actually going to work? Bruce, I saw you had your hand up on there. Do you have some tidbits to share with us too?
Yeah, these are all really good ways to do it. But there's one other thing: if you don't have a store near you, or sometimes you don't have the know where to go to ask for help, get involved with professional groups. Like we have the Professional Photographers of California. You guys have professional photographers of Washington, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Get involved with them. They've gone through all of this too, and can probably help considerably.
I'm a bit embarrassed to say that wasn't higher up on my list when coming through, because I do love professional organizations. Professional Photographers of Washington, American Society of Photographers, Professional Photographers of America, all great ways to connect with your local community. You can find others that are in your area that are probably photographing the same things you are, sharing information, seeing setups or actual real-world reviews of what's working and what's not working. I know things that I've seen gear that is advertised as the latest and greatest, and it's got all the bells and whistles, and it looks really cool, but it's so complicated to use that you don't actually use all of those different features that are out there. Talking to somebody that actually uses the gear and does it, walks the walk, it makes a big difference. Anybody else do anything different? Nope. All right. So speaking of professional associations, I'm going to switch and share my screen right here. This weekend is the AI Summit for Photographers from the American Society of Photographers. I'm going to be hosting it, and I'm putting on a program on creating a branding blueprint that's on there. But I've got a quick ad that's up here because I just want to show you. I'm very, very excited. Been working with all of these instructors, and holy cow, there's a ton of information that's on there. They're all broken down into bite-sized 1-hour chunks. And the registration does include recordings. So even if you can't attend all of it live or any of it, you can still register and get all the recordings. There's so much information on there, everything from Facebook ads and marketing. Yeti, I think you'd enjoy that one. To using AI for planning, mood boards, conceptual shoots, doing portrait retouching, enhancing your wildlife images and landscapes. It's a really, really cool program. I just wanted to share that with you. In the follow-up email, I'll put the link on it. It's also been in some of the emails I've been sending out. It's this weekend. It's a great value. 2 days of education for $125 or $135, depending on if you're an ASP member or not. But definitely check it out if you get the chance. All right, so let's dive into images, my favorite thing to look at. And up first, we've got Above the Law. This one's from Liz, and the humor in this image is absolutely fantastic. We've got this eagle that's just eating there. It says no trespassing, no hunting, no fishing, and it looks like that eagle's doing all three of those things. And so let's look at the image and figure out what's working on it and what we can improve on. So when I first view the image, it's got impact. We know what we're looking at. It's really, really tight, and I appreciate it. And I do like that we're not totally centered on it. It'd be really, really easy to make this a bullseye type element, but off-centering it is a really strong design choice. It just makes it feel more balanced, especially as we have the kind of butt of the bird sticking off. It just gives a little bit of direction and some breathing room around it. So that feels really, really nice. I am looking at some of the tones that we have here, and we're getting a bit bright. And it feels like there might be some areas, like maybe in the foot, that we're starting to blow out some of those details. Our sign is really, really bright white, and we're getting kind of dark in some of the feathers. So I think a little bit of toning, preferably if you have that raw image, Liz, I think we can pull back and recover a little bit of these details. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. That's Controller Command J to do it. And I'm going to bring up my favorite Camera Raw filter. And so inside of Camera Raw, we've got the ability to manipulate all of our exposure stuff. And I can see from the histogram that we're not blowing out those highlights, but we are getting pretty close to some of those. And that's mirroring what I'm seeing right here, where we're not totally blowing it out, but it is pretty bright. So we'll see how much we can recover this image. So what I'm going to do is pull down progressively the white and the highlights, just to make it so that we're pulling that back. And we can already see that we're starting to recover some of those details in there. It's looking pretty nice. I do want to lift up some of these really dark areas too. So I'm going to use that with the shadows just to get a little bit more detail in there. But I want to maintain that contrast. So I'm going to darken down our blacks just a hair. Maybe flatten this out and darken it down just a little bit. Get that contrast coming back in. So we've got something that's a little bit moodier here. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on this. And so now we've not pulling out quite so much of those specular highlights that are coming through. We've got the dramatic tones coming through here. Here's a quick before and after. Not a huge difference, but it does give us some of that rich detail back in the bird. And it makes it so that our sign isn't quite so bright. All really nice things to do. So that one's pretty minor. I do like the presentation on this. It's neutral and it pulls in those nice warm colors. It seems very appropriate and fitting. And I'm going to pick on you just a little bit on some of the technical things here. This is really common. I'm zooming in really aggressively on here, more than what's meant to be seen. But we've got a little bit of chromatic aberrations. And that's where we see that kind of green or sometimes magenta fringing that can be on really high contrast areas. In this case, it's where black goes up against pure white. And that's a technical thing that we have with lenses. So that's lens selection. But we can account for it. So I'm going to duplicate this one more time and come up here into Camera Raw filter, and let's see if we can handle some of these chromatic aberrations. And so we've got, under our optics, we've got our fringing, and here we are, our chromatic aberrations, so we can defringe. So I can go and I can actually select an area, and I'm going to go in real close up here and just click this neutralize color, and it's going to find some of those. See if we can find it. I'm already getting up there. We can maybe expand that green, a little bit of that purple range too, to try to balance out some of that. A little bit coming in there. There we go. So we can go and kind of neutralize some of that area. I'll come up just a little bit more. That just gives us that nice clean look if our lens does happen to, in that high contrast area, give us that chromatic aberrations coming through. So just kind of a before and after of what that looks like. Real straightforward to clean up, just like lens distortion is pretty straightforward to clean up. That just makes it so that if we have high contrast areas, we're just neutralizing it. That way we don't see it in the final image. So overall, I think you've got a fun image here, Liz. All right. Oop, I'm skipping ahead. Let's look at this image from Yeti, and it's the Renaissance Restraint. That's just fun to say. I like the alliteration in the title. And based on what I'm seeing here, I'm going to assume that we're in the artist category. We've got some reference images down here, so we can see our original Renaissance man, our background, and maybe some texture and some coloring that's happening in the final image. And we can see that we've got our same image that's here. So let's break down a couple of things that we're seeing on it, and I'm going to dive right into the technical stuff. And so I'm specifically looking at the consistency of treatment. So our background, we're getting a mixture of really defined lines. Let me get a hard brush on here so we can see. And I'll put that, maybe something a little bit more vibrant to see. There we go. I'll put that on a new layer. Perfect. So we've got some really straight lines. And then we have some fuzzy lines, like on the edge of the jacket. And then we have straight lines again. and we've got other areas that are kind of fuzzy. So we've got a mixture of techniques, so we're not consistent on that. So on the artist category, I'm looking at the artistic skill, the transformation that's coming through. So I'd love to see everything that sharp, crisp lines. I think it works really well for this image. We've got detail and depth of field that's coming in the background. So if we can get that crispness to show through everywhere, we're going to have much more consistency. I wouldn't want to see everything all soft and painterly like we have here, because we'd be missing out like on that collar. All of this just needs that sharp texture. It's just going to help us be a little bit more consistent on that image. So pay attention to that technique and detail. Other thing I'm seeing is some of our tonal colors. So we've got really deep blacks like up here in the hat and in some of the shaded areas. Yet in our background, we have pretty muted tones. So they're kind of crushed dark colors that we have with a very warm bias. But if we're looking at the blacks, we're falling into a pure black, that nice crisp blue on it. So we're not consistent in our colors. So we do want to be mindful about matching everything. So if this black was maybe lifted just a little bit, so we aren't at pure black, and it kind of matches some of the tonality that we see in the rest of the scene. Could be a little bit heavier because that atmospheric perspective, meaning things that are further away in that background are going to be a different color, and they're going to have a different tonal value to it. So I'd expect it to be a little bit softer in those blacks and maybe a little bit cooler, and as we get up closer, be a little bit warmer. But we've got a very, very warm background, so I'd expect our foreground subject to be very warm as well. And the tonality is maybe just a little bit too tight. So a minor change on that could make a big difference just in terms of making things feel a little bit more cohesive. I'm also looking at some of the color temperature on this. It feels very, very yellow. And that is something that we do see in older paintings. So they tend to have a little bit of a yellow bias to them. And that's mostly from age on that oil painting that's coming through. So as we're looking at images, or as they start to age over hundreds of years, they're going to start to get that slight warming or yellowing effect to it. So they weren't originally painted that way in most cases, but we see them that way, and we tend to think of them that way. So if we do have a modern recreation, it is totally appropriate to have that warm undertone to it. It's going to make us feel like it's a period piece because it's not going to be that crisp, clear color. But this does feel a bit heavy. So we're missing some of the natural coloring that comes through it. And let me show you what I mean. I'm going to use the color and vibrance slider on here, and let's set our white point to maybe somewhere in his collar. So this is going to put a really, really heavy blue temperature to this as we kind of neutralize this color. We click around, maybe find a couple of different spots. But everything's going to be very, very neutralized. Notice how his face kind of gets a magenta or purple color shift to it. So this is very, very heavy. I'm going to back this off a bit. Let's see what we're looking like, maybe pulling that back just a little bit, somewhere around 40-50%. We start to get something that feels a little bit more neutralized. Our colors still aren't there 100%, but we're getting close. So I'm going to do a really quick levels adjustment. And in levels, we can actually affect color, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to switch it from RGB, and we're going to pull up. And looking up here, I've got quite a bit of a kind of a cyan tint that's on here. So I'm going to pull up my reds, because red is opposite cyan. So I can actually change my cyan and red coloring just by moving this midpoint on the slider. So we start at the 1, so I can just drag it to the left just a little bit to introduce a little bit of red into our image. Looking really nice. And let's play, I've got a slight magenta cast now on here, so we can try to balance that out just a teeniest little bit too. It's looking really nice. If we add a little bit more of that warmth in there, we can play with our red and blue, our blue and yellow sliders. I'm going to pop that just a teeny tiny bit over right about there's looking cool. Pretty minor movements between those ones, but when I group them together and we turn it on and off, it's a big difference between those in terms of how natural that color looks. So do we want it to be a heavy design element, or do you want it to be a subtle accent? And of course, we can adjust the opacity to find somewhere in between. And that's usually the correct answer, is say, okay, let's totally correct for it. And then let's back it off to allow some of that natural color to come through. I can say that around 60 50, 60% like that, feels pretty natural for me in terms of really healthy looking coloring that still has that warm undertone to it. So definitely digging that there as well. So I do want to call out a couple of other things in terms of presentation. Not that something's right or wrong with it, but this is a really common thing that I'm seeing where we don't necessarily have even spacing all the way around an image. This one looks like we're off just a teeny tiny bit, so it's not a total even spacing that's coming across. We can see that pretty pronounced on the bottom, a little bit up at the top. This feels shorter that's up here. This one just feels like it wasn't properly centered for it. But let me show you a pretty cool technique for being able to make sure that we've got our lines coming exactly where they need to be. And I'm going to exaggerate this, so I've got a big thick brush so we can see where our lines are. But we can turn on rulers and guides. And so we can do that by going View and Rulers. So this is going to produce you can also hit Control or Command R to get it up here. But we have our ruler that's here now. And it's going to start with the 0, 0 position in the upper left of our image. And we can see, oh, I'm down a couple inches over here. I'm down a couple inches over here. Oop, like that. So we can find exactly where those lines are supposed to be. So what do we do when we have our image that's pulled out here? We've already got our matting, and we just need to make sure that like a keystroke is in a normal or a good spot. Well, we've got a little feature up here where we can take and we can set our 0 point. So instead of being in the upper left, maybe we want our 0 point to be on the upper left of the actual image, not on the canvas size. All we have to do is in this upper left section, come in and drag it so it's hitting our image. And I like to zoom into 100% when I'm doing this so that I can make sure that it's actually on that spot. I may have been a little bit off, so I'm just going to drag it up there at 100%. And now look, we've got 0 and 0 right on that upper point. So we're over 1 3/4 inches or so to the upper left for the image. So now that I have that at the location that I want, I can create some guides for this. So I can just drag over from this ruler. I'm not anything fancy. I'm just dragging over until I get to that 0 mark. And if I want to make sure that I'm exactly hitting it, I just hold down the Shift key and it's going to lock it in. I'm at that 0 mark. I'm going to do it for both the vertical and the horizontal. And then we can always set it up to the other areas, or I can eyeball it. Just be at 100% if you're going to do that. Coming in, we want to make sure we're hitting those points. And if we weren't at 100%, I'm coming in now, so I am. I can see I'm just a little bit off. We can get the Move tool, and we can just drag them, make sure that we're hitting exactly where we need to be on those points. So now we've got a perfect outline of where our images are. So if we're wanting to set up, say, a small 1/4 inch thing, then I can go to that 0 mark, hold down Shift, and pull it out so that I am, say, a 1/4 inch out. And I can be coming down to 0, a 1/4 inch up. This is going to be a perfect 1/4 inch border. And if I need to change it around, I can move this point. So we're right back here, and I've got those 0 marks set. So I can go a 1/4 inch out and a 1/4 inch down. I've got perfect measurements now. So if I wanted to do a stroke and I want a secondary stroke, I can just draw that super easy, and it's going to be perfect for this particular image. Kind of a cool way to make sure that we're getting it. Now, a little bit of a tip, instead of doing a vector-based, or excuse me, a layer-based one, where we're talking with actual like rasterized pixels, so something's like, okay, I've got my brush that's up here, and I could just be drawing and say maybe making, let me back up so we can see it. On this outer one, I could draw, there we go, coming up here and drawing that outer one, going something like edit stroke would be a pretty common way, saying, you know what, let's make that a 5 pixel stroke and we'll center it on that line. Hit OK. I guess that I probably shouldn't have used my guides to show, or the same color cyan for it, my pen. You can also hit the Control or Command and semicolon to turn those on and off really easily. But I can see that I can get that mark exactly where I need it. So I just used the marquee tool and did a stroke. But the challenge with doing this technique is that if you decide to like maybe later crop your image and now we move it down so that it's, I'm going to do this pretty exaggerated, maybe this size instead, look what happens to my stroke. I'm going to turn off that. I now have a really, really wide border on one and a really flattened out border on the other. Let me show you how to prevent that. I'm going to turn back on my guides, and this time we're going to come over here to the shape tool and pick the rectangular tool. Now I can do the exact same dragging that's up here, and I can define what I want it to do. I've got the contextual taskbar right here and say, you know what, no fill, but I do want to have a stroke that's my color, and I want it to be 5 pixels. We'll just go ahead and type in 5 right there, and I've got now my image. Let me turn off these guides so we can see it's exactly perfect that's right there. Coming in. Oh, I've got rounded corners. That's because I've got my corner radius set. We'll go ahead and change that so we have no rounded corners because I like them nice and sharp if we're going to be doing a key line here. But now if I go through and I change this, like maybe coming down to like half the size like we had before, get really, really small. Doesn't matter how much I'm doing. Let's look at it. Look at it. It's always going to be that 5 pixel one because we're working with a vector instead of a rasterized file. So if you're doing strokes, I definitely like to use them as vector pieces instead of having a rasterized layer, which can get distorted if we start playing with the sizes. Kind of a cool thing. Not a lot of people know about that one. It's also kind of fun because we can change what our stroke options look like. So if you ever want to have like a cutout line for like an ad, maybe on social media or something, pulling attention into it, you can do that. You can also have corner radiuses changed too, like I did before. So if you want it to kind of smooth out, you can do it. And it's got kind of fun ways being able to play with. I think it's definitely underutilized, the shape tool. It's got a lot of impact there. Okay, that was a bunch of information, a little bit of a tangent. I do want to come back and get everybody's opinion, though, on the coloring. Are you a fan of really deep, saturated, warm tones coming through? Do you like the more neutralized look? How are we feeling on here? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Neutral or the more saturated? Anybody have a preference on there? Yeti likes the warmer one, so he's the artist on there. I don't blame him on there. That one's good too. Liz liked the neutral. Coming up, it looks like we're split on opinions on there. I go back and forth on it. It's what your artistic vision's coming through with it. But I think the tonality at the very least would definitely help with it. One other little thing, just playing with our backgrounds, I can see from our source image here that that's a boat that's coming down here. But on the image, we can't quite tell that that's a boat because the water's being blocked on it. So considering recentering or maybe taking this element out, Yeti, as you're working on it so that we've got that clarity that's there. All right, we're going to look at more images coming through. I love it. I'm just skipping ahead. All right, so we've got this image from Sarah. And this is really cool. I appreciate the photojournalistic aspect of it. It feels like a candid moment that's not trying too hard, yet feels really, really nice. And there's a couple of things that are working really well. I love this strong directional backlight that's coming through. It's making all this smoke just pop and stand out. It adds to the translucent aspect of the gowns that they're wearing. It is really, really neat. So really nice eye to be able to capture this moment, and it's not a portrait of them looking. It's more about the emotion, that moment that's coming there. So for something that's storytelling, we're definitely hitting up on that. Great color palette that's coming through. So I was like, holy cow, you've done a lot that's on this. There are a couple of things that I think we can do to just add a little bit extra punch. Excuse me. First one I'm going to look at is the crop on it. I really, really like the crop. I think it just needs a teeny, teeny, tiny little bit of tweak to it. And specifically, I'm talking about the straighten tool. So that's this little level that's up here. And what we can do with it is that we can draw a straight line across. So in this one, there's just barely, barely, barely off from center that's up here. Just a little teeny tiny bit off. We do that, we've got a nice straight line here. It helps guide us. Everything else has this nice motion to it. So if we are going to have a horizon line, just like our seascapes, just like our landscapes, cityscapes, anything like that, we like to see that straight horizon. This gives us a solid line to look at. So a really minor tweak. I don't want to go more aggressive in with the crop. Like I wouldn't necessarily try to just keep it in on this moment because I think their shadow, their background are all such powerful moments that we'd be missing out on more of that story. I really, really dig any shadows that are coming through. I am a bit torn on the yellow that's up here in the upper part of the image. It does kind of pull your attention away, but it also balances out, and we've got some color harmony with it. So I think overall, I'd keep this crop exactly as you have it, and just look at a little bit of toning. So I'm going to duplicate this and pull this into Camera Raw. That's Filter, Camera Raw Filter. And we've got a couple of things going on. So this ground right here is really bright, and it does pull our attention away from our primary subjects. So we can create a super quick mask. And so I'm just going to pop over here to the Quick Mask tool, and let's look at a linear gradient. So I'm going to pull up from this, and I'm going to kind of follow this line that's happening with the curb and say, you know what, let's pull that up so we get that nice gradual kind of look coming through to it. So it's a soft taper. And I want to say, you know what, I don't want to have my subject in there. I want them to have our full definition. So we're going to get rid of that. We're looking pretty nice. So now that I've got this mask created, I can go through and say, pull down some of these highlights. I'm just going to pull that down just a little bit. Maybe some of the whites that are there, and decrease that contrast just a little bit. So we're outside still, we can still get those beautiful bits of definition. I'm actually going to darken those shadows just a little bit because I like that dark and moody, but it's not quite so bright. So now their gowns that they're wearing are going to be our central area, the brightest part of the image. Can do a little bit more. I'm popping back into the overall image adjusting, and I'm seeing that some of these highlights are a little bit bright, so I can pull those down just a little bit. We'll do that with the whites as well. And we're getting a little bit lost in some of these shadowed areas, so I'm going to brighten those up just a hair. Again, I don't want to exaggerate this like crazy, just a little bit so we get some of that definition in there. We've already got such a beautiful histogram. I just want to give a little bit more focus so we can stay locked in on this story because it's so, so nice. So I'm really digging what's happening here, but since we've lifted some of those shadows and played with the contrast on this, we're starting to get really, really rich, saturated colors, maybe to the point that it's not quite believable. So I'm going to manage the color just a little teeny tiny bit by coming down here to the saturation and just pulling it off. Most images tend to be oversaturated. We do that for the impact, the look that's on it. But if you're going to be looking at an image for an extended period of time, there's nothing quite like a slightly desaturated image. It's one of the reasons black and white images have such power and staying power to it, is that we aren't fatiguing the eyes. We're allowed to experience the story, the natural movement that's in it. So just pulling back the saturation teeny tiny bit. There we go. I think somewhere around right here definitely is working for me. Kind of the before and after on that. Just pulls it out, feels believable, feels real, and it feels natural, which is exactly what I'm wanting from this type of image. If you wanted to take it a step further, we could, and I'm a little bit torn on this one. I'm going to come up to select people and see if we can just do a slight pop in on some of their faces. So I'm going to say, let's look at person 1, and let's just get maybe their facial skin. It's coming up here, okay? And see if we can add in person 2, also getting their facial skin. Both are selected. I'm going to go ahead and hit create and see if we can just bump that exposure teeniest tiny bit, and maybe the whites just a teeny tiny bit. I don't want to take this too much. They're definitely in shadows. They're looking away from the sun. I just don't want it to be too heavy, but a little bit of a pop that's coming in there I think is nice. We'll let Camera Raw do its thinking. So here's the after and the before. After, before. For me, the focus and attention just goes straight into our subjects once we've played with that toning and color just a little bit. Before, I'm getting kind of lost in some of this area back here versus where that beautiful story is. What do you think? Is this taking it too far for a photojournalism type image, or is this within the realms of normal toning for you? Anybody have a thought on that?
I would probably have backed off the red, the shadows, just a little bit more and bumped up the chalice that holds the incense. You'll be interested to know that there was an entire additional person behind them, and where the separation between the red and the ochre on the wall, there were 3 bands of color. And that came out of this image with just the regular a Band-Aid tool. It did not need generative AI.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're saying that with this image, this wasn't as shot, but you've gone through and you've already removed elements from it.
I have.
Okay, gotcha. So in that, for those that are wanting to say enter image competition, that would exclude this from being in the reportage category. Because we've removed elements from the image. So in that category, if you're entering like your local state competition or ASP or PPA, for the photojournalism or reportage category, we are not allowed to remove elements. We can just do our tone and color correction that's on it. Now, for something that's going to be telling the story, conveying that emotion, we are not limited by those. So that means that we can do the remove things, which is what Sarah's saying. She used our remove tool, or maybe we used our spot healing brush in order to pull those elements out. Either way, I really enjoy what this image does and the message that it conveys. Anybody else have a thought on that?
I have one, Chris.
Yeah, Kimberly. Nice to see you.
I know. I had an available evening. I'm so excited. I love this. I love the story here. I would consider flipping it horizontally so that the shadows actually are a leading line to the subjects.
Ooh.
And sometimes when I do that, I flip it and I go, no, it had to be the other way. But I actually screen captured this, flipped it, and I kind of liked it because those shadows lead you right into them.
Ooh.
As well as the curb in the back.
It totally does. Holy cow. I just flipped it while you were talking, and
Yep.
From a compositional standpoint, what Kimberly's saying is these shadows just lead us right into the subject. We have a leading line. We have leading lines that are coming through, and the fog and low saturation kind of keep us locked in to the image over here. Kind of surprising that it doesn't do that as much when we have it flipped the other way. And this is something that we don't have any writing, we don't have any text or contextual clues that lets us know which direction was actually there when we photographed it. Sarah, I'd strongly consider a flip on this one. I missed that coming through, and holy cow, that is a big, big impact that's coming through on that image.
And Chris, one thing I like to do is it tends to keep the eye in the picture, because we've been coming from here in America, we read from left to right. So you come in from the left and they're looking. Where are they looking?
Yep.
Going back to the right or left.
Yep, we come down here. We've got a very circular composition where we're staying locked into that. It's almost like that accidental Renaissance style, right?
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. The more I look at this image, the more I enjoy it. Sarah, I hope you enter this into image competition.
Yeah, what about the ochre at the top? I couldn't decide whether to get rid of it or not. Because the eye does really go for it.
It does. It does. I'm torn. Like, we've got the color harmony that's here, but it does distract from it. And if we were to, say, take it, I'm just going to use generative here because it's really quick. And we can take a peek at what it looks like with or without.
Well, the stripes on the wall were absolutely no good at all. But,
yeah.
I mean, to me, this is a little plain. So I can't decide.
It does frames them.
Having the yellow that's there?
Yeah, and it does work well with it. I mean, it's simpler without it, but I also kind of enjoy it.
I like it too.
Well, maybe darken it. Just change the tone so that it is a brownish tone rather than the very yellow.
I'm torn on this one.
Yeah, that's a toughie.
Yeah,
I can kind of direct your eye. I'm sorry, Chris, I shouldn't be jumping in, but
please do.
The vessel that they're holding, especially if it's because it is color harmony to that, so your eye goes there and then they're framed by a similar color.
Maybe just a little bit less of cropping it down so that it is a smaller band at the top and bringing up the gold of the chalice.
I'd be cautious on doing that. And so if we were to crop it in so it wasn't quite as tall, this feels more like a mistake. When we have a little bit of meat there, it feels intentional. Like, it feels like it should be part of this process. So I like the image, Sarah. I like it. Nice job.
Thank you.
Let's see. Looking at I've been totally ignoring comments. I'm sorry, everybody. Didn't know how to make faces pop. We learned that one in the last one. Yeti likes it with the yellow on top. No fun. All right. So I've got an image from Mike Price that's here, and he did something really cool with it, where we've got a really high contrast silhouette that's happening in the image, and he added in a keystroke that goes and it uses the natural framing within this image to kind of form a little bit of a presentation for us. I thought this was quite clever coming through. We've got our storytelling elements really nicely coming up, so it's kind of fun. We do have some busyness in that background, looking at maybe like some of the cars or things. I do think that putting this in black and white was a good choice because it takes away those distractions, makes them feel a little bit more natural and normal. When I am looking at the subject, we do understand what's happening with it, but we don't quite get the full dimension or glory of the horse. If there was a way to do this where we had a little bit more of a profile of the horse, or maybe even just the head turned, so we could see just a little bit of that nose and give it a slight boop or something like that, I think that we could add to the impact of this image. But the overall creativity is really, really nice, and I do appreciate the refreshing stance on that presentation. How are you guys feeling on this? Is this cool, or is it too much of a one-trick pony? Pun intended. No. Sorry, got to have a little bit of cheesy humor that's on there. Anybody have any thoughts on this sort of presentation? Nope. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So, in terms of processing for this image, I think he's made some good choices that are on it. I would love to see just a slightly different capture and play with the technique a little bit more, but fun. Okay. We're gonna come up. I've got one more image for us to check out tonight. This one's American Farmer, and this is from Misty. And we've got kind of a neat thing going on. So I'm assuming this is like a senior portrait type session. We've got this young man. He's zooming in too much on this one. Let me get the brush that's up here. He's standing on maybe like a grain tower or something like that. We've got some foreground elements. So a lot of kind of neat natural things. I'm going to assume because of the warmth that's on his face that maybe we're getting that last little kiss of sun that's coming through. So we're kind of balancing the warm and the cool. It's an interesting image. It's definitely fun to look at. It does give me a little bit of an optical illusion, particularly when I'm looking at his feet. I get that he's standing on the elevator, but he just makes that look, or the ladder, but it makes it look so easy that it almost feels copy and paste, or we're floating a little bit on it. Would love to see maybe a little bit of motion instead of him. He's just got to have a great core or something like that. We're able to stand so perfectly straight and tall on it. So a little bit of interaction showing where he's at would be really, really nice coming through. The orange does feel a little bit bright to me. So we're both in the color saturation. I love the tonality that's happening like the hands, but the face, because we're a lighter skin and that's how we're exposed on there, does feel a little bit radioactive, just a teeny tiny bit glowy. That's coming through. The overall layering, where we've got a foreground, we've got our midground, we've got some background, extreme background coming through. We definitely have some nice depth to the image, and we've separated. I did that on the same layer. There we go. Put a new one, and we separate it so our subject's not smack dab in the middle. So we've got them just slightly off-centered, which I think definitely works for this. Good placement, good feeling. I do have a hard time telling what this is or identifying it. He probably knows. I'm assuming it's a shoot of some sort, but it doesn't necessarily add to the story. If we had maybe something else that could have been a foreground element, that might be kind of cool. Let's look at color correcting this, just so we can see how we might go about doing that. And I'm going to duplicate this one again, just so we can bring back our colors, and let's go into our color and vibrance. I love this new tool that they updated. I don't know if you've been paying attention with all the updates that have been coming through in Photoshop. It feels like there's a dozen new ones every week, but in the color and vibrance, they added in so that we actually have as an adjustment layer a way of controlling our temperature Oh, I love this and have wanted this for so long. Previously, we've been able to do it by like hue and saturation, but that doesn't give us our color temperature, our consistent vocab, or we could go into camera raw for doing it. But it's kind of nice that we're here, so I can take this and help neutralize some of these colors. Obviously, works much better if we do have the original raw file that we're looking on, but now I'm looking at his face and we're kind of neutralizing those tones. I'm changing around the color and everything else, but we're getting some pretty nice tones here. So if I want to, I'm just inverting that mask, and then I can come up here with maybe a soft brush. Just like that, and we can paint in, just kind of balance out a little bit of that color that's coming through. So this is maybe too neutralized for what this is, but we'll add some of this back in. I thought that's feeling a little bit too magenta, so I want to pull some of our greens in here. There we go. That feels a little bit more normal. They're very saturated, a little bit lighter that's on it. And if we wanted to, we could paint through everything. So I can come up here and maybe get a bit of his arm that's coming through. Let's paint. I'm going pretty quick. We could do a selection on this too. Some of the selection tools are fantastic. Being able to select like people or specifically parts of people. For instance, I've got my subject that's right here, and we could select just right inside using the select tool. Let's get his upper body skin, his arms, his hands. Let's get that facial skin that's coming up here. So we could just select them all this way. Or to do that, I'm going to delete my layer mask. Okay, and now I got to go back and actually select those people. Get our facial skin, body skin, arms, hands. We got all of that stuff. Apply. Just got to think about it for a second. There we go. We got it selected. So now we can apply that mask, and it only hits those particular areas. Probably should have hit the hair on that one too. So there's still time. I can do that. We'll go select people. Let me get the hair in there too. Let's get that selection of the hair. And we're going to add it to the mask. And I'm just painting in white to get it added into that mask. And so now we've got this color correction that's done up. Too heavy, so we're going to pull back just a little bit. Maybe take it up to 60-70%. Really nice feeling that's there. So it's not quite as strong. Feels a little bit more naturalized, a little bit more neutralized to it. I do wonder about the sunset that's in the background. This feels just very soft and pastel. It's coming through. Makes me wonder if there was a replacement. Maybe we're an overcast day or something happening with it. I don't see any contextual clues that might hint at that one. Maybe a little bit of a sharp angle there. Not sure. So maybe something was done to it. Not entirely sure. I think it's got an overall pleasing effect going from the blue to the warm. We've got blues. We've got warms coming throughout this image. Overall, I think this, the maker's done some really, really nice things with it. If we get that slight pose change so he didn't feel like he's got abs of steel holding that up there, I'd be 100% in on this image. What do you guys think? Anything else you would change on it?
I would consider that background, the blues going to the warms there and the grass at the bottom, dropping the exposure on a little bit just because it's so bright that I'm drawn more to the brightness of the background than I am to the subject.
Ooh, let's take a peek and see what that looks like. I just did a stamped layer that's on here, but we could have done a couple of things. I'm just selecting the sky. See if it finds it. Found most of the sky, not quite all of it. I'll just circle some more with our select brush. Get this one added to. There we go. Added to. So many different ways to select things. But I'm definitely enjoying the select subject tool, and we'll take out that one. And Shift and Alt or Shift and Option are amazing for doing that. But let's create just a quick curves layer that's up here, and let's take some of these tones. I'll click on it, and we'll just pull those down, get a little bit richer. It's thinking and jittering. Might be a little bit too much, but I'm going to go ahead and keep that and see if we can maybe just bring that back just a little bit. Does kind of feel like the more Americana having that deep, rich blue. I like the stronger blue up top. I'm not digging the bottom as much. So now this is a problem that I frequently have where I've got a mask, and now it's like I want to add more mask things to it. So a quick thing that we can do is just put a group and put a layer into that group so it's in here. now I've got more room for being able to do a mask. So I can create a mask that's on here and maybe do something like a simple gradient. Say we'll go up like that. And look at this. This now group has the mask on it. So I still have my original mask preserved, but I got a secondary mask, so we can kind of pull that out. And now we can say, you know what, that's too much or not enough. Play with the density to kind of find that perfect sweet spot that's there. I think you're right. The little bit richer color definitely helps with this one. I like that tonality coming down. This is really nice. Cool. Thank you for the suggestions. I appreciate those. Those are fun to look at. And I know it's hard to believe, but it has been an hour already. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me for another episode of Office Hours. I had a blast and some great conversations today. Would love to get more photo questions from you, as well as additional images for us to work on and share and learn together. And just a reminder that AI Summit is this weekend. It's going to be pretty awesome, not going to lie. We've been working really hard on putting it together. I think you'd enjoy it if you attended. All right, that's officially a wrap for tonight. Have a good one, everybody.